to the University of Law's Get Psyched podcast. I'm Julie Prescott, Head of Psychology at the University, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Camellia Taylor, who runs a garden design business, The Garden Taylor, and combines this with her psychology training to bring a unique approach to her business. Hi, Camellia. So lovely to have you here.
Hello.
Thank you for taking the time to join us. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No, thank you for joining us. And for our listeners then, for the first kind of question, can you highlight which areas of psychology you studied and why you felt the subject would enhance your learning or career?
So I think it's probably good for me to say that when I started psychology, I never knew that I was going to end up in garden design. So when I was working in psychology, I worked with young people on the autism spectrum and women that had experienced domestic violence. I studied psychology at Birkbeck in London, and then I went on to study at UCL speech and language therapy. I loved studying psychology, but yeah, it wasn't clear to me at the time that this was going to be my path and this was going to be where I ended up. So the subjects that I studied were ones that weren't really connected to garden design.
No, it is a really interesting route that you've taken to bring the psychology into the garden design. And that's what makes this a really interesting podcast, to understand, just to learn and hear about your story. So it must have been very exciting to be asked to be involved in this project with Aspens for the Chelsea Flower Show. I understand the design brief was to connect mental health therapy to the natural environment, which very much aligns, with what you've just mentioned about your psychology background. Can you tell us more about your psychology as a foundation for your unique approach to garden design?
Yeah, of course. So I first met Aspens a few years ago when I was studying garden design at Kew. And the reason that me and Aspens connected so well was because of my background in psychology, and I wanted to base my final project on Aspens. And so Aspens are a charity for residential living for people on the autism spectrum and with learning disabilities. And so the thing that they loved about the project was that I was bringing a background that understood the needs of the people and actually listened to them and connected with them. And from there, we just had this relationship that's lasted for years, which eventually ended up with us both going to Chelsea Flower Show together. And I created this garden for them that's actually, as we speak, being rebuilt back at Aspens. And
that's fabulous, isn't it? That's really good.
It's amazing. It was so nice. I left there when the diggers went in yesterday, and today I'm here and I'm getting updated photos, which is amazing. But yeah, so it's the garden that I created at Chelsea was a garden for Aspens, and I always said it was a garden that was for Aspens to be shown at Chelsea, and it was to connect mental health and nature and why it makes us feel good with garden design. And so it was called the Natural Affinity Garden for Aspens, because I believe that we all have this natural affinity to nature. And it was a garden that was for everyone. So although Aspens are a charity for people with autism and learning disabilities, actually nature's good for us all. So it was a garden that connects our senses and really kind of directs it. It focuses on each sense independently. So I was looking at touch and breaking it down and looking at movement and temperature. And so I really try to bring psychology into my garden designs, but in a way that it's not just within, say, healthcare, because actually nature's good for everybody. It's so many different ways. And so I try to design in a way that brings psychology in, so it's for everyone.
That's great. So I believe it was based on the garden that you developed was based on the biophilia hypothesis. Can you just tell our listeners a little bit more about that hypothesis, please?
Yeah, of course. So the biophilia hypothesis, we have known for for years. Like Beethoven wrote symphonies about nature being good for us. We know that nature is good for us. And in the 70s, Erich Fromm talked about this love and this passion we have for nature and living things. And then it was 10 years later that Edward Wilson, he coined the term the biophilia hypothesis. And the biophilia hypothesis is this love that we have for nature and how it makes us feel, and this appreciation. Humans spend 99.9% of our existence in nature. Like the fabric of us comes from nature. Our brains are still based in the natural triggers that we have. And so the biophilia hypothesis is it's this idea of this natural affinity that humans have towards nature, and how something, say, like Shinrin-yoku, which is forest bathing, how it makes us feel good. It lowers our cortisol. It lowers our blood pressure. It helps with anxiety. We feel rested in nature. It makes us feel restful. There's this tendency that we have to be drawn to water. It's one of the most prized elements in nature because it makes us feel good. And so this idea of the biophilia hypothesis is this love that we have and how it makes us feel, how it connects us, how it grounds us. Even the act of putting your hands in the soil, it has so many microbiomes in the soil that when we put our hands in, it releases serotonin and it makes us feel good. So I'm passionate about the biophilia hypothesis because it's just so true. Nature makes us feel good, and in a world that's very different to where we've come from, like our nervous system comes from this world of being in nature, and it's not adapted to how the lives we're living now. I feel very passionate about being in nature and how it's good for us and how actually it makes our bodies feel rested.
It can really gauge your enthusiasm for this. I didn't realise about the touching the soil, so I'll have to not wear my gardening gloves so often and really.
No, yeah.
But no, that's it. Your passion is really there, and it's great to hear it because it's, especially like you say, in these times with lots of technology around us, it's nice to get back to nature, and especially for people's mental health, it's good to go for a walk. I really enjoy swimming. So swimming really helps my mental health. I just switch off and I swim and I just love it. It is really good to just kind of be in your own mind kind of thing.
It is. And I think when I was designing the garden for Chelsea, I mean, designing something that was going on to a really public stage, and actually in the months leading up to it, I felt anxiety. I felt worried because I knew I was going onto a world stage to be judged. And so I did things like gardened with my hands in the soil, like you, like love water. So I would be drawn to go to the sea, and I would instantly feel that calming effect of just seeing the waves and just grounding myself. And so in times where I do feel anxious or stressed, I gravitate to nature, and just because I feel passionate about it, and it's that practicing what you're saying, like, and what you believe in.
That's a really good message for our listeners, isn't it? It's a really good take-home message. But I understand your love for sensory gardens recently inspired you to attend an eco-sensory course. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that's developed your work with your clients?
I was really keen to not be somebody that had a background in psychology and was a designer, and I wanted to keep the two connected, and I'm really passionate about keeping both of them alive because I believe that they both work together. And so I realised last year that actually I can still do the courses, the psychology courses that are out there. And I thought, actually, that's can only be a good thing for me to keep on top of the current research, so I know what's going on and I can keep bringing it into my designs. And so the eco-sensory course, it was one that fitted very, very naturally, because it was talking about exactly the things that I'm interested in why nature is good for us. And so it was a therapy course, and it was great. It kind of just backed it gave me the research and things that I'm reading about. It just put it all in one place, and it was just really just amazing just to be absorbing that research of something and backing up what I talk about and what I believe. And so I did it because I think it's helpful for my work. It's helpful for me to know that current information, and I think it's good for my clients as well.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And one of the good things about psychology is that it can be used in so many diverse. Your knowledge of psychology can be used in so many diverse settings, and this is a really good example, isn't it? And what I always say to students, if you don't quite know what you want to do, but you want to be kind of supporting people or working with people, psychology is a really good degree to give you some insights, isn't it? So we know a number of our students won't be taking a traditional route through a psychology career. So what advice might you have for those who want to take psychology studies in their own direction? Because you've very much taken psychology in your own direction.
Yeah, for me, it's been a lovely natural fit, because it's something that I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about gardens, being outside, but I'm also creative, and I love to draw and design. And so the two worked so well together. I think the advice that I would give is, if you're passionate about something, follow it, because I completely agree. I think psychology fits into so many different fields. I've got friends that went into lots of different areas, and like things like marketing. I was thinking about it this morning when I was thinking about like the biophilia hypothesis in relation to marketing. I was thinking about, say, Apple, like the company. They've brought psychology into even their name. Like the fruit is the name of their company. The cloud that collects all of our data has been given this lovely natural name, the cloud. And so psychology is used in so many different ways. And so I think it's such a good grounding. I think it's a brilliant degree. And I would encourage anybody to do a psychology degree. I think it's fantastic. But then after that, I would think about where your interests are, what you're interested in. Is it design? Is it marketing? Do you like going into different companies? Is it kind of working within in a corporate world? There's so many. I would follow your passion if you've got something. Psychology is people, and I think you can just bring it in so many different ways.
I think that's really interesting. I've never really thought about the cloud being the cloud and being a natural thing that has been brought into the world of technology, basically. So that is really interesting as well. And I was just thinking about, never even considered that. But
this morning I was just thinking, I was like, it's because it's collecting all of our data, and I was like, but they've given it such a lovely name, the cloud. And it's nice, it's fascinating
that we all like to look at and go, that is because I've got an interest in cyber psychology and how we kind of relate to so no, that is really interesting. I've never thought about that before. But no, like you say, there is so many routes because within psychology. So there's obviously the core routes, but then you can take, and I always think it's kind of like a stepping stone, that you get experience and then it's like a stepping stone. And it seems like your career has been a bit like that. You've done your psychology degree, then your speech and language therapy, and your work, and then and obviously your passion for gardening. You've managed to bring them all together in a really interesting and entrepreneurial way. So when you decided to study garden design, Did you intend to kind of leave psychology behind, or did you have that intention to bring the psychology into it?
I think I realised that the two could work together really beautifully. I think the reason I had a career change was it was prompted by me having my children, and I had a few years away from psychology. I had my two daughters, and I realised that I could go back and I could change and do something else. And it just started by me exploring that design element. And then I went to Q and I did a design course. And it was while I was studying, I just realised that I don't have to leave psychology behind, because I didn't want to. I felt very, very torn when I was changing careers about what I was going to do and what my future was going to look like. And actually, when I realised that the two can work so well together, it just felt like a very, very natural fit. And I think the thing about garden design is garden design tends to be a second career. So lots of people in my industry come from different backgrounds, which creates such a richness of designers. And so you have designers who have got media backgrounds, marketing, corporate backgrounds, lots of different backgrounds. So we all bring something different in. And actually, when I was studying, I realized that actually I love people. I love listening to people. And when you're designing a garden, psychology comes into it in so many ways, because you're creating a garden for a client, and you're not creating a garden that you want it to be. You're creating the garden that they want, but you have to elicit that out of them. You have to tease that out of them. And you do that by listening. And I think that was why I was really careful in the early days to not let a garden designer with a psychology background just be gardens that were designed for healthcare, because psychology is so much more. It's everything. It's all of us. And so it was a natural fit. And actually, I've realised that psychology works in terms of the clients, negotiating between clients, because you may have two partners that disagree, which happens quite often. And so it's negotiating and trying to find a middle ground for them. It's the textures you bring in, the senses, the planting. I mean, planting is a huge thing. If I was to plant a garden with lots of reds and oranges and the hot colours, that would be creating a garden for somebody that is exciting and has lots of energy to it. Whereas somebody might want a garden that's calming and reflective. And so then I would be looking at the cool colour palette. So your blues and your purples and your whites and your greens, which is a shorter wavelength that makes us feel restful. And so psychology just comes into it in so many ways. And actually, it was quite exciting for me when I realised that the two can just be linked so beautifully.
Yeah, and you're right about the listening to people and really trying to understand what they're saying. That kind of, even if they're not necessarily saying it, but you've got that insight to be able to kind of tease it out and really understand. Yeah, I found it interesting about the colours as well, because obviously there's a lot of psychology around colours, and maybe listeners might want to go into the garden and see what kind of colours they've chosen to, because I will be doing, to see what kind of, what kind of garden really does inspire you, because you go out, you buy you're attracted to certain colours and plants, aren't you? So it is really interesting that you're not just picking a plant and the colour of the plant. You are, there is a rationale behind that, really, isn't there? It says something about you, basically, is what I'm trying to say, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. It can, and you tend to I rarely find clients that say they like reds and blues. It's normally they like reds and oranges. So they tend to, without knowing, like those colour palettes. I must admit, I prefer the more calming hues. They're the ones that I'm drawn to.
Well, I'm
And
thinking
so
what I've got, and the more the pastel-y type colours, the whites, yellows, and pale pinks, kind of just picturing my garden now and thinking. But yeah, that's what. Yeah, so it's the calming. We're into the calming sphere.
Yeah, we are. I like to go into my garden to feel calm.
But it goes back to what you were saying before, that kind of what you want from the garden, and a lot of it is around that kind of escapism, if you like, isn't it? Just a break from the hustle and bustle of the world, and a break from technology.
And that's what I find that clients are looking for. They're always looking for things that I hear are clients saying they want a garden that will take them on a journey. They want gardens that help them feel connected as a family, or they want a garden where they can all have their own individual spaces, but then they come back together as a family. It's all, when clients talk about the gardens they want, it's this kind of mysterious, calming, like lovely environment that they're trying to create. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So you're clearly kind of giving back in your work as a garden designer. You're clearly giving back. So psychology may be the first step for many of our listeners. So how would you encourage those who are keen to give back in a way that feels true to them? So you've obviously developed this, and is there any advice you can give to our listeners?
I'd say it's following a passion, like follow something that you're passionate about. And I think that the best way to give back really is to share your knowledge, and to teach. That's the way that we can give back, and to share those passions. And so that's how I do it. So I'd encourage anybody just to look at the things that they're interested in, because actually it's the passion that people love. It's the passion that people want to listen to. And so that's the way that I think that you can give back. And I think that's the way that I give back through the psychology. Is it's the subject that I love. It's the subject that I haven't left behind. It's something that I'm keen to always keep alive. I think if I had more time, I would be doing way more courses. But I think it's just, if it's something that you're really interested in, share that knowledge.
That's really, really good advice. And your passion, as I mentioned before, really does come out when you're talking. You can really feel your passion for both the garden design and the psychology, and that merging of the two. So thank you for that. It's been really interesting to learn more about garden design, basically, and thinking about how we relate to nature. And the colour, like we talk about the colours and the importance of nature, like you say, to human beings, because that's, that is our background. It's
where we come from.
Yeah, it's our roots, isn't it? So
it is, and we're connected to all living things. And so actually it's having that appreciation and the love for them. It sits better with us, and it makes us feel good.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good for us. So no, thank you for that. And thank you for joining us today for this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Like I say, it has been really interesting, and I think there's some really good kind of take-home messages for listeners as well, is to kind of get back to nature, and in whatever way that might be, especially as you mentioned previously about if you're feeling anxious or stressed, just to kind of regroup yourself, if you like, and get that calming feel from nature, and
I think
do something that you're passionate about in your career as well. So that's fabulous.
And I think, like, something I touched upon was talking about Shinrin-yoku, which is forest bathing. And I think there's this misconception that you need to have a forest to be able to go and do it, and actually you don't. And I think so many people live in cities. If you can just find a park or somewhere where there's nature around, Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, all it is it's opening our five senses to nature. And so it's about not being put off by that name, being in a forest. It's kind of going into your park and opening your five senses independently, because that's what makes us feel really good as humans, when we get to really connect all five senses. And it's something we rarely get to do these days. But if you look, you smell, especially after the rain, the geosmin in the air, you can smell the soil, and you get down and you touch and you listen. If you can do that in your local park and just really hone in on each of those senses independently, it can just be so good for us and just make us feel good. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that, because I think
I'm
sometimes
glad you did, because we don't, like you say, you don't often think about it, do you? We might lie on the grass, but we're not actually kind of thinking about the use of our senses while we're doing that.
No. Yeah, so no, I just think it's a powerful thing to do.
Well, thank you very much. And again, thank you for joining the podcast. It has been really interesting. And so for the listeners, to learn more about our psychology courses, please visit the University of Law website. And thank you to our guest today, and goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you.